You would be forgiven if you thought that Chevy had already killed off the Equinox by now. Just like the long-in-the-tooth Malibu, these two models represent an older era of design and technology at General Motors and Chevy specifically, so that's why this has kind of fallen behind compared to some other newer options. It doesn't have the latest tech offerings, it doesn't have the same value play, and it doesn't have the same interior space, but most importantly, it doesn't have any alternative fuel options. If you go with an RS trim like this, you'll notice Chevy darkens out the front grille, giving it a smokier finish that complements that bright RS badge quite nicely. They also blacken out the Chevy bow tie logo to make sure you know you've got a really sporty looking Equinox right here. And in general, I think this looks very similar to the refreshed Traverse I drove last year, but that makes sense because you could lump that model in with the Equinox and the Malibu as models that represent Chevy's old design language. But that doesn't mean this isn't ugly. This is still a very attractive front end. We've got LED DRLs that are split from the bottom by this chrome element here. The DRLs being LED is actually not standard. You have to go for an upper trim like RS or Premier, but the LED headlights are standard on all trims. Now fog lights, those are not right here. These are actually the turn signals on the side, and those are only incandescent on this trim. Fog lights are available on the upper Premier, but they're down here as well. These are the standard 19-inch blacked out aluminum alloy wheels you'll find standard on the RS trim. They are wrapped in 235/50 Hankook all-season tires. Now, if you like this sort of blacked out motif, but you want more feature content, there is the Redline Edition package for the Premier trim that gets you similar blacked out wheels, just with the familiar hash marks, the red hash marks you find on other models with the Redline package, and some other red decals on the exterior and the black Chevy bow tie emblem. The Equinox definitely grew substantially in size over its previous generation, but in 2023 it is not the largest in this segment anymore. It has a 183.1-inch overall length with a 107.3 wheelbase. It's 3 inches longer than a Toyota RAV4, but 0.4 of an inch shorter than the new Kia Sportage. The Subaru Forester is taller and sits higher off the ground, but this generally has a more, minivan-like shape than that model. We don't know exact ground clearance figures for the RS trim. Chevy does list the LS trim and the LT trim as having 7.9 inches, while the Premier trim has 8 inches. So I assume this falls somewhere in that range. Moving on to the rear, you can see the RS theming continues with the blacked out emblem, the blacked out naming and badging, as well as the RS badge here in red. We do have a rear spoiler, which I really appreciate, though I hope for the next generation, if that is what we saw in those spy shots, that they plan on moving this up to below the spoiler, just to, clean it up back here a little bit. The base Equinox comes standard with Chevy Safety Assist, which includes automatic high beams, automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, forward collision alert, a follow distance indicator, lane keeping assist with lane departure warning, and GM's Teen Driver feature. You'll like this lane keeping assist if you prefer for your car not to actively steer in the corners for you, but you won't like it if you're not a fan of that pinball feeling. Super Cruise is not available at all on the Equinox, though the Equinox EV will get it in upper trims. We'll have to wait and see if the presumed next generation Equinox gets it at all. Optional features include a 360-degree surround view camera, a blind spot monitor, rear cross traffic alert, front and rear parking assist, and adaptive cruise control. Yes, adaptive cruise control is not standard, but it is standard on a lot of the competition. Once upon a time in this very generation, the Equinox was available with 3 powertrains, this base 1.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder, a turbo diesel, and a 2-liter turbocharged gas 4-cylinder, but the take rate for those last 2 engines were so low that they had to kill them. So now we only have this 1.5 from the base Malibu. It makes 175 horsepower, 203 pound-feet of torque, and it's mated to either front or all-wheel drive via a 6-speed automatic. The 2-liter had a 9-speed, that is GM's excellent 9-speed. This one is stuck with an older 6-speed. If you go with front-wheel drive, you'll get 28 miles per gallon combined. If you go with all-wheel drive like my tester here, you'll get 26 combined from a 14.9-gallon fuel tank. As always, front seat comfort is subjective, but I'm gonna have to give these a 7 out of 10 because for some reason they just feel a little bit too small. As you can see, the cushion does not extend out very far, so people of average size like myself are gonna find that their legs hang out pretty far. Also, the overall profile of the seats, they're pretty small, so they feel more bolstered than they actually are. They just feel like they hug you a little bit too tight for what this car actually is. Now, they are pretty soft and nicely appointed in leather. They are heated on this model, and on the driver's side, you have 10-way power adjustability with 2-way lumbar support. The passenger side gets 6-way manual adjustments, but it still has height adjustment, just no lumbar support. The steering wheel is heated on this model as well, and it manually tilts and telescopes like so. For a sporty trim like the RS, I would have expected paddle shifters, but alas, we just have the typical GM controls here on the back of the steering wheel. Now, when it comes to the rear seat, this is a really roomy place to spend time. As you can see, where the seat was sitting where I had it, I have about 4 inches of knee room left. Notice the seat back pockets on both sides, which is a nice touch, and then a lot of footroom under that front seat. If you were a Rockette, you would be very welcome back here in this seat. And the floor itself is also completely flat, so if you put somebody here, they're not going to have their feet up higher in the, in their face like that. The problem is the seat back itself is really hard because of this fold down center armrest here, which does have 2 cup holders. We also have the 2 air vents, 2 USB-A charging ports, and a 120 volt outlet right down there. And LED lighting, which is kind of a nice touch. These are LED lights in the ceiling. And because we have the large pano moonroof, it's very light and airy in here, even though this has the black interior. And we do have a good bit of headroom. So if you're a taller person, you might find this back seat to be pretty accommodating. The seats do recline just a little bit, like this much. So not really. But overall, very comfortable back seat. Behind the optional power folding tailgate, you'll find 29.9 cubic feet of space. And then if you fold down the 60-40 split second row, you'll get 63.9 cubic feet of space. Unfortunately, there are no levers back here to fold the seats down. You'll have to go around to do so. And once you do, you'll find that like the GMC Terrain, this Equinox has a lot less cargo space than vehicles with smaller exterior footprints like the Toyota RAV4, which has a hair under 70 cubic feet of space, or the Hyundai Kia Twins, which go way beyond 70 cubic feet of space. The nice thing about this cargo space is the flat lip. There is no actual drop in height. You don't have to lift up and over. It's very flush with the door sill here. And under here we do have some extra storage. This panel can be removed to reveal a space that could possibly fit actually definitely could fit a compact spare tire in here. They haven't put one in there for you already, but there's probably enough clearance that you could fit one in there if you want. But that's also just generally a decent amount of extra space where you could store things. If your car came with a tonneau cover, which this one did not, that would be able to be stowed right here, which is pretty convenient. Taking a look around the interior, let's start with my favorite part. Up top here is the optional panoramic moonroof, which is gigantor. It is really quite massive. It brings in a ton of light into this dark cabin, which makes sense because this is the RS trim, so the only color available is this jet black interior. It does come standard with cloth, but you can get a package that brings the leather seat trim with the red accented stitching. These seats up front are also, like I said, heated, and of course, as always, high adjustable headrests and seat belts. Then moving on over to the door panel. It's really mostly hard plastic, except for the part where you'll rest your arm right here. That is nicely padded with some red accented stitching, but literally everything else around that is hard plastic. I would like to see Chevy do a little bit better with the materials choice on the potential next generation Equinox, because even that right there, it looks shiny, but it is plastic. Down below here, you will find the speaker grills for the 7-speaker premium Bose sound system. It's not as good as the Mazda Bose system, but this Bose system is still pretty darn good compared to a lot of options in this segment. Then moving on to the front, we have a dashboard that does still have the hard touch stuff here, but more of the softer stuff up top right here with the stitching. The glove box here is on the medium size. I'd say it's pretty wide, not super deep, but you could probably fit an 11-inch tablet in there if you wanted to. And then over to the dashboard, this is where things really start to show their age. While this setup is perfectly fine and easy to use, it is ripped straight out of the also pretty old Chevy Malibu. You can definitely see that in the way we have this sort of tablet-like display, but it's not really a tablet display because it is still flush with the dashboard. It just barely sticks out here at the top. But it's got everything you need for 2023. It is only 8 inches, but it has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard. Thank you very much. It's very intuitive. It has the latest version of Chevy's infotainment system software, and it works very, very nicely. It has very snappy responses, good graphics, some apps that you can download, Alexa built in, things like that. That's a really good system in every GM product that I've used it in. And then down below here, you'll notice a lot of physical controls. I do find this center section to be reminiscent of older GM products, and it at first was a little bit visually confusing, but once you figure out where everything is, it's pretty easy to figure out. Buttons for your heated seats right there. No ventilated seats on offer. This is a dual zone auto climate control though. And then down below that, this space looks like you could put a wireless charge pad in it, but alas, there is no wireless charge on offer in this model. That is my Google Pixel 6 Pro sticking out there. It's not really even big enough to fit that. Behind that though, a USB-C port, USB-A port, an auxiliary jack, an SD card slot, and a 12-volt outlet right there. And as a nice change of pace, this material around the shifter here, it's not gloss black per se, but it is a shiny finish that definitely looks less scratch prone than typical piano black interior, so that's a nice touch. But the shifter here is a pretty easy to use one. Just pull back to go to drive and go further down there for low. No manual shifting, no paddle shifters. A little switch for your electronic parking brake and 2 very large cup holders. Then one final little storage cubby before you get to the console storage right here. As you can see, I have quite a few items in there, including the Monroney. They also spiced it up with 2 USB-A charge ports right here. The steering wheel has a really thick rim to it, which is nicely leather wrapped and heated on this model. It has the older style design from Chevy that you will find again in the Malibu. Buttons for your cruise control are going to be found right here, as well as your heated steering wheel button, which does have a light to indicate if you have it turned on, which I really appreciate. Your lane keeping assist button is right here, also indicated with the light, which is turned on, as you can see. Horn. And then your button to control what's going on in this display right up here. And speaking of that display, it's pretty small compared to other options in the segment now. I assume for the next generation that will get much bigger, just like you find on the new Chevy Trax and the Colorado. So if you want a nicer, more modern, or more tech-focused interior, I would definitely wait for the potential next Equinox. But otherwise, this still gets the job done. It has a lot of things you can view, like your current audio, phone, settings. You have to go all the way back to the left. You can't like shuffle through. Fuel economy, then basic things like your speed and range. All of that is flanked by 2 analog gauges for your tach and your speedometer, as well as some other temperature gauges up top. In typical GM fashion, we don't have paddles, but we do have these buttons to control audio functions. On the right here, this is going to be your volume. On the other side, it's going to be track forward and backward. Up top, we have a feature that I love, which is a sunglass holder. Thank you very much, Chevy. And then we've got 2 controls to open and close your pano moonroof, your lights, as well as your OnStar SOS functions right there. The Equinox is equipped with auto engine start-stop, which can be turned off by this physical button right here. And if you shift the car into reverse, that will bring up the 360-degree surround view camera. And it is quite a good one. It has very clear resolution, a very nicely stitched bird's eye camera with a ton of different views, including your front view, your back view, your overhead view looking down from the back or the front end of the vehicle, your side views, your trailer view, which again, there is no tow hitch, so that's not really that useful, but if you want to look straight down below your bumper in the back, that is what that would be for. And then this button toggles on and off the 360-degree element. Once you have your 2023 Equinox out on the road, the first thing you'll notice is the engine stop-start system, which can be defeated by the physical button here on the dashboard if you don't like how it feels. But let's see how it does. If I lift my foot off the brake, it's pretty quick, pretty smooth. There are times I've noticed around town with the car this week that it's not exactly smooth. It can be a little bit abrupt and a little bit in your face, but again, you can turn it off if you don't like it. Now, once you do start bringing the Equinox up to speed, remember, this was a car that used to be offered in 3 engine choices. Now we only have the 1 Goldilocks choice. It's not the most efficient of the 3, and it's not the quickest of the 3, but it gets the job done as a base engine. With that 6-speed automatic and not the 9-speed from the 2-liter, that 9-speed that I really love, the one that GM built in-house. The 6-speed here is still good. It doesn't, of course, have enough gears to really coast at the same lower RPM level on the highway, but for acceleration purposes, it does shift pretty quickly. Now, once you are at a certain speed like I'm at right now, and you want to immediately accelerate pretty quickly, jabbing the throttle does make the transmission hesitate just a little bit. It doesn't immediately downshift like I'd like it to, like it does in the 9-speed. So if you like that 9-speed, you're not gonna like the 6-speed quite as much. But again, once you're accelerating hard, it does really bang off the shifts that it can. And I like that part about it. It does feel pretty quick and snappy. Now, for 2023, the brake system is actually new. It's a new electronically assisted brake system, and I have to say it feels just like the other brakes I feel in the GM products I've driven over the last year. It's a firmer pedal than the average in this segment, so it definitely you definitely start feeling the brakes as soon as you touch the pedal. There's no dead travel. It doesn't feel spongy or mushy. If you like a softer pedal, you're not going to like the feel of this brake pedal as much. And just like the 2-liter equipped model Alex tested a few years back, this still has a sportier feel than something like a Subaru Forester or a Toyota RAV4, even the latest versions of those models that have come out since this first came out. But it's not going to feel as sporty as a Mazda CX-5 or a CX-50. That definitely is their niche. They have the sportier drive feel in this segment. But newcomers like the Kia Sportage and the Hyundai Tucson definitely also gained some sportiness to their driving experiences since this model came out. So when it comes to comparing it to the current crop of crossovers, this feels pretty average. And that's not to say it's not good. It has a nice balance between the sporty, firm feel, but the comfortable ride quality. And when you push it through a corner, yeah, there's going to be some body lean, some roll, some pitch and dive, the typical things, but they are well controlled in this particular model. And even though we have the larger wheels on the outside, ride quality, yeah, it does bring in some of the smaller bumps from the road, but it does so in a polished way, so it doesn't feel really too dramatic or too annoying. It's not an unrefined experience, let's just put it that way. So because it is really right there in the middle of the pack in terms of dynamics, I'll give the handling a B+. Let's give it a B+. Now in terms of the ride quality, I'm going to give that an A- because I actually prefer this balance of that sporty and comfortable feel over something that's too sporty and too brittle feeling. This never feels that far removed from the mission, which is being a comfortable mainstream crossover for families. This does that really well without feeling too soft. Now this has happened a couple of times recently, but when I tested cabin noise at 50 miles per hour with the same equipment Alex uses, I got 59 decibels in this model at 50 miles per hour. He got closer to 70 when he drove the 2-liter model a couple of years ago. So I don't know if that's because of our locations, the fact that he's in California and the roads sound different. I've addressed this before, but for some reason my numbers are a lot lower, but 59 is what I got. And we do have a standard acoustic laminated front glass windshield, which does help quiet things down. Wind noise is really kept at a minimum. Even though we have this large panoramic moonroof, I definitely find it to be a pretty serene place, though at higher speeds you will hear the road noise and especially the tire noise. Even though these aren't the widest tires out there, you will hear more of that than you will anything else. And fuel economy, that is one area where, Chevy was offering options for people before. There was that diesel that could get over 40 miles per gallon on the highway. And if you wanted less fuel economy and you wanted more performance, there was that 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder, but now we are stuck with this middle of the road option that with all-wheel drive is rated at 26 miles per gallon combined, but in my test loop around the Detroit Metro, I got closer to 27.2. Now that rating is the same as what you'll find on the platform mate, the GMC Terrain, but it's also better than the Sportage, the brand new Kia Sportage. The base engine of that model with all-wheel drive will get 25 miles per gallon combined, but this still isn't as good as the newest Subaru Forester or Toyota RAV4. Those will get 28 and 29 respectively with all-wheel drive. So if you're looking for a hybridized option in this segment, obviously the Equinox is not going to be that one for you, but you do also have that EV version coming out in a year or so. So if you want an electric crossover in this segment, honestly, this is the only game in town, at least officially announced. But until that electric model comes out, it would be nice for Chevy to come out with a middle ground option for people who just cannot logistically go to electric vehicles right now. A really nice hybrid system would work well in this car, and I don't see why they couldn't do that for the next generation. There is another generation of this model coming that's non-EV, so if you are interested in the Equinox and you want to see what the more modern take on it is going to be, stay tuned because that model will be coming out within the next year or so. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the Chevy Equinox. For starters, it has a comfortable cabin for 4 passengers and even a little bit more if you want to squeeze 5 into that second row. Very good visibility out of the front for the driver, good visibility out of the back. It's a very easy car to drive in that regard. It also has a comfortable ride that leans more towards the sporty side than the soft and plush side. It's not as sporty as a Mazda CX-5 or CX-50, but way sportier feeling than a Subaru Forester. Also, the interior is very quiet. We've got that standard acoustic laminated glass windshield, so that really helps keep wind noise down. If you want a quiet entry in this segment, the Equinox should be near the top of your list. The Equinox does have solid tech. The infotainment system works really easily, but others have caught up and even surpassed in terms of screen size, available features, and things like that. If you want the most modern crossover in this segment, you're going to want to look at something like a Kia Sportage or a Hyundai Tucson. Front seat comfort is important in this segment, and for me, the seats in the Equinox are just a little bit too small in profile and a little bit too heavily bolstered. I know this is the RS trim that we were looking at, but overall, I just don't find them very comfortable for long road trip duties. Cargo capacity was pretty decent when the Equinox first came out for its 3rd generation, but others have definitely passed it. It does not have the largest space in the class any longer. And finally, the fact that we only have one engine choice for 2023 really is a stark contrast between what you see in the competition. Toyota RAV4 and the Kia and the Hyundai, they all offer multiple engines, and at least one is a hybrid in all those options. So if you want the more efficient option that has more power, the other competitors will give that to you. Chevy no longer does. You are stuck with the Goldilocks option that is not like deadly slow, but not lightning quick either, but it's right there in the middle, and fuel economy is all right. But if you want choice in this segment, the Equinox no longer has that. Looking at pricing, the competitors I have included are, of course, the platform-mate GMC Terrain, the Toyota RAV4, and the Kia Sportage. The Kia Sportage is going to be the newest on this list, and it actually has the lowest base price of $27,615. The Equinox is number 2 at $27,995 for the base LS trim with front-wheel drive. There used to be a even more base trim, the L trim, but Chevy got rid of that. The GMC Terrain, for some reason, costs quite a bit more than any of these options and a lot more than the Equinox. It starts at $31,295, and in my opinion, it doesn't really bring much more to the conversation in terms of features or interior amenities and quality. I would say they're neck and neck. In fact, I think the Equinox looks better than the Terrain and has a better interior, so the fact that the Equinox is less expensive is a good thing. Now, they're both about to be replaced, so if you want the latest GM two-row crossovers, you're going to want to wait till next year for the redesigned versions. But for now, this is what we're working with, and the Terrain is the most expensive here. One thing to note about the Terrain is that, unlike the Equinox, the Terrain sticks with the 9-speed auto from the 2-liter that is no longer available on that model either. But the fact that the GMC got the 9-speed and the Equinox got the 6-speed, there is a pretty big difference between those two transmissions in terms of feel and, of course, fuel economy and acceleration. Apparently, though, in acceleration testing, the Equinox is actually a little bit faster with that 6-speed, but in terms of fuel economy, you might see a little bit better with the Terrain because of that extra, or I guess those extra 3 gears. The RAV4 has an 8-speed automatic and a base 2.5-liter. The Sportage has a 2.5-liter as well. They all are very similar in power output, except the Equinox has a little bit more torque than the others. It has over 200 pound-feet of torque. The others have way below that. But in terms of acceleration feel, it doesn't feel that much torqueier or peppier than the RAV4 or the Sportage. Now, the one advantage for RAV4 and Sportage, they are both offered in hybrid and plug-in hybrid powertrains. The Terrain and the Equinox have neither. So if you're looking for a more efficient proposition, you're going to want to take that Equinox and Terrain off your list, though the fuel economy of those models is comparable to what you'll find in the base engines of the competition. But at the same time, I would prefer to have the variety. And they used to give us that variety, just no one wants diesels and no one wants to pay extra for a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, which is why the faster engines at Toyota and Kia and Hyundai, which if you want to rope in the Tucson, are their hybrids. So if you want a higher performance version, you got to go hybrid, which makes sense. Let me know what you think about all that in the comment section below. If you're a fan of the Equinox and its sister, the Terrain, make sure to like this video. If you like detailed car reviews, of course, hit that bell icon and subscribe to the channel for more of this type of content. And if you like EV-specific content, we have the EV Buyer's Guide channel as well. If you like to listen to Alex talk about all things cars on a podcast format, we've got that right here on YouTube as well as Auto Buyer's Guide Podcast and on your favorite streaming platforms. And finally, we have the Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter platforms, as well as the Alex on Auto's website for all the written reviews. Thank you so much as always, and we'll see you next time.